UFC 317 just wrapped up last night. It was a really good card, stacked with quite a few finishes. I'm going to go through and break down how the fights went. Main event, Ilia Topuria, obviously, we'll get to that. He made a fucking statement at 155. The power clearly translates. Whoever was talking about, the Conor McGregor power didn't translate when he went to 155, thinking that this was going to be the same story with Topuria. Yeah, no. But either way, great night of fights. We did pretty good on the prelims as far as like betting goes. But things did kind of start to fall apart once we got to the main card. But either way, starting it off, Jonata, Denise, and Alvin Hines. Alvin Hines, you can't deny that he's really tough. He ate some really big shots from Jonata the entire fight. This, in my opinion, there was, I believe, one or two, and we'll get to them later on in the card, 30-27s. I think there might have been an argument for a 30-27 at some point in this fight, but either way, it was a very one-sided fight. Alvin Hines had a couple spurts of him winging an overhand right that somehow landed on Denise. But for the most part, it was a very one-sided fight. Alvin got cut up very, very quickly. He was wearing it. His face was battered. He looked like he had just eaten 112 strikes to the face. Or 94. But this is like the current state of the heavyweight division. For the heavyweights, Denise, in my opinion, has some really good kickboxing. He obviously outclassed Alvin last night, but like I was talking about the other day, the heavyweight division is dismal when it comes to skill right now. It's really bad. It hasn't been this bad in a long time. Alvin Hines is your typical heavyweight right now. Moves really slow and just wings overhand rights. No setups. I mean, he looked really, really uncomfortable in there. He was a smaller guy, but still, he is a very good representation of what the skill looks like at the heavyweight division right now. Like, even Jonata Denise, right? Really good kickboxing. What the fuck is he going to do to Tom Aspinall? Like, even if he were to go on a tear, right? And he somehow makes his way up to fight for a belt. What is Jonata Denise going to do to Tom Aspinall? Nothing. This dude moves like a slug in cement. Okay? He might have good kickboxing that'll get him higher in the rankings than other heavyweights, but don't get it twisted. There's no one remotely close to beating Tom Aspinall anytime soon in the heavyweight division based off of the landscape skill-wise. But moving on. Nico Price and Jacoby Smith, we called this one. We also called this one, so started off very nice. Called this one as well. Nico is he's 8-9 in the UFC now. He had a 500 record in the UFC going into this one. And honestly, you feel bad for Nico a little bit, right? It's like he's unranked. He hasn't been close to the rankings in years at this point. And they feed him to Jacoby Smith like that. Like, I know guys don't want to say no to fights because they, we don't want to upset Dana or whatever. If I were Nico Price, man, and they came up to me and said, you want to fight this guy? I'd say, you can go get fucked. Give me someone that's closer to my age. Give me someone that's like, not Jim Miller, but Jim Miller-esque, right? Some other old fuck that's been in there for another almost 20 fights, right? But we knew that this was going to happen. I thought that Jacoby was going to actually get it done on the feet. He took him down, looked good, got a really clean rear naked choke. Real straightforward here. Nico Price, we said it in the fight breakdown earlier this week. He was simply being fed to the wolves in this fight, and that's what it looked like. As soon as it started, he was getting overwhelmed. Jacoby was putting a pace on him. There was no point in this fight where Jacoby was in any sort of danger. So, unfortunate Nico had to get matched up against someone like this, but the future is very bright for this guy. He looked really, really good. I will say, if he gets matched up against like a really, really, really good striker, I could see him having some issues. There were a few spots yesterday on the feed that it's kind of like a Malcolm Wellmaker, right? But good win for Jacoby Smith. Moves on to 11-0. Terrence McKinney and Slava Borshev, super, super quick. I mean, Terrence McKinney is obviously known for not seeing the second round, whether it's him being finished or him finishing his opponent. I called this one as well. So starting off 3 for 3. Love that. I didn't see Terrence McKinney getting the sub this quickly, and I did think that he was going to get Borshev out of there on the feet, because I thought Borshev was going to try and stand and strike with him. But McKinney came out quick, got that takedown, and he really had a nice, I don't even really know if you can characterize it as like a real anaconda choke, but it looked like he kind of rolled for an anaconda choke. Didn't quite get where he needed to. Like, you have to be on your hip with an anaconda choke, or like a darce. It started as an anaconda choke from the front headlock, and once they rolled to the hip, it was kind of like a modified darce. But you could tell that Borshev was doing a really good job of fighting the choking hand on the figure 4. And so Terrence McKinney made a very, very good decision. Instead of potentially losing the position there and losing the choke, he transitioned to a mounted guillotine. And as soon as he transitioned into the mount, you could tell that Vyashlav's face was turning purple. It looked like he was about to pop his fucking head off his shoulders. Very tight guillotine. Slick jiu-jitsu. If Terrence McKinney can not get knocked out by flying knees in the first round, he's got a bright future. Like, I love the way this kid fights. Always super exciting. But his IQ has gotten him in trouble, and his ability to get knocked out just by incredible nature. If he doesn't get knocked out like that anymore, I could see him being like an actual, rising contender, right? Potentially see him get in the ranks here in the soon. But he's got to stay away from those flying knees and getting knocked out in the first round. But when he looks good, man, he looks good. His striking looks on point. Last night, his jiu-jitsu, which not a lot of people realize how good and underrated Terrence McKinney's jiu-jitsu is. I'll say this, anytime that this is brought up, and I'll talk about it a little bit in the main event, there's a big difference between MMA jiu-jitsu and just jiu-jitsu, and he's got it. Moving on. Viviana, Araujo, and Tracy Cortez called this one as well. Also called that it was going to be a decision, because Tracy Cortez could not finish someone if you paid her to do it, which you are paying. She is being paid to try and finish Viviana. But it was the commentating on this one really pissed me off. Like, before they walked out, they were touting Viviana Araujo as she was like this huge ranked opponent, and yeah, she's ranked number 8, but she's 1-4 in her last 5 fights. Or she's 2-4. Right? Tracy is on a pretty big fight win streak. I think she might have lost once recently, but Viviana was just ahead of her in the ranking because Tracy doesn't fight very often. She fights once a fucking year. The commentators were trying to make it sound like Araujo was this huge test for Tracy. And it was quite the opposite. Another very confusing thing with this fight, around the third round, Araujo started making comments towards her corner and shaking her head, and John Anik comes on and says she's complaining to her corner about grease in the gloves or something like that. And at the time, one, that doesn't make sense. Why would you want your own gloves to be greasy? It would fuck your grips up if you wanted to grapple, right? And two, why would you wait until the third round when you're getting absolutely mauled? She was getting mauled at that point. Why would you wait until the third round to bring it up? All I'm saying. Tracy Cortez made it look easy. Viviana is now 2-4, I believe, in her last 6. Correct. 2-4 in her last 6. So 1, get her out of the fucking rankings. Thank you. And 2, cut her ass. She doesn't need to be here anymore. She does not need to be here anymore. But Tracy Cortez moves to 12-2. Another very, very boring decision by her. I don't know if we're ever going to see Tracy Cortez finish a fight. I don't. Her jiu-jitsu is okay, but it's really not that good to really threaten submissions on anybody that knows what the fuck they're doing on the ground. I digress. Moving on. Hyder Emil, Jose Miguel Delgado. We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're 5 for 5 at this point. Like, I'm feeling good. I'm sitting here looking at the card going, am I about to shoot a perfect streak here? We're 5 for 5 on the prelims. Just wait. But this one was, obviously another very, very quick finish. Prelims had some very quick finishes in the first round. But I thought this one was going to be a little bit more of a stand-up war. I did think that Hyder Emil was going to take it to Jose, and he did. Like, it started out as a furious pace. Hyder took it to Jose. Jose weathered the storm very quickly. Not that it was like a huge barrage of punches, but Hyder put the pace on him very, very quickly, and you could tell that it was about to be a furious pace if Hyder didn't get knocked out by the knee. But Hyder was a little too aggressive. Jose put him back on his back foot, had him cover up, peppered him with a couple jabs and got him to raise his guard a little bit. And then he was close enough to grab the back of Hyder's neck, almost like a Muay Thai clinch, and just kneed the fuck out of him right on his chin. And it didn't even look like it landed like really flush. Like, it touched his chin, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like a Cheeto Vera Sean O'Malley knee where Cheeto eats that and you go, how did your teeth not just get pulverized into dust? Like, how did you not just get, it wasn't that type of knee. It hit flush on his chin, but when I watched the replay, I was like, damn, that didn't really look like that hit that hard. But I've also never taken a knee to the face, so who knows? But Jose Miguel Delgado looked really, really good for 26 seconds that we saw him. Tough outcome. I think that the fans really got robbed a little bit here. Obviously, we didn't because we got a really, really great knockout, but in the sense that both of these guys are really, really talented featherweight prospects, I think we would have had a really, really high level scrap between these two had it gone a little longer. But also, I'm not mad about a flying knee finish in the first 30 seconds of the fight. So Jose Delgado moves on. Very, very talented prospect in featherweight. Very excited to see who they give him next. Moving on. This is where things kind of started to fall apart, not gonna lie. Gregory Rodriguez really fucked my mojo up. And I knew that this one was a risk when I took this betting line here, when I took Jacker Manson. I knew it was a risk. Gregory Rodriguez is very physical. I knew he was going to be the much bigger guy in there. Again, I do not know how Gregory Rodriguez makes 185. I genuinely don't. He's huge. It should not be possible to make that weight, but he does. So he torments people. But I don't know if here's the deal. Jacker Manson was looking pretty damn good. He was picking RoboCop apart. Truly. RoboCop was already cut up pretty good in the first round. And he was getting picked apart. Jacker Manson looked very good. But unfortunately in this sport, you look very good until you don't. And he looked really good until he met that fucking left hook or uppercut or whatever it was. Goodness gracious. That was one of the gnarliest knockouts I've seen this year. Maybe in the last couple years. I mean, it was gross. It was hard to watch. And RoboCop finishes with a very, very unnecessary very unnecessary hammer fist. Jacker Manson was literally in corpse guard. Eyes rolled back in his head, and Gregory Rodriguez thinks, yeah, he's gonna wake back up from this and get back in this fight. Dude, that was worse. His follow-up was right up there with Jorge Masvidal hitting those 2 licks on Ben Askren after he knocked him out stone cold. Very similar. It's like, listen, I understand, and again, I've never been in an octagon before, but I understand that your job is to hurt that person until the ref stops you. However, we have seen in the UFC and other promotions where guys are cognizant of the fact that they just separated their opponent from consciousness, not just like a TKO. This was a brutal knockout, okay? There's a big difference between a TKO where you've got your opponent hurt and you're trying to get them out of there with punches, right? And they're not intelligently defending themselves. And then there's a brutal, devastating knockout like this, where no matter how high your adrenaline is, no matter how intense the fight is, no matter what, when you see something like this, it doesn't take a fucking brain surgeon to know that Jacker Manson was not getting up from that. And so it was a little unfortunate. And I was sitting on the couch going, wow, that was fucked. I get that, you're supposed to go until the ref stops you, but fucking common sense goes a long way sometimes. And unfortunately, Jacker Manson was out for a really, really long time. It was a kind of a scary scene. He was laid up for a good 3 or 4 minutes. And I'm sure that extra hammer fist helped nothing in that fact. But this is where things started to fall apart for me, betting wise. Jacker Manson was looking really good, and then RoboCop gets him out of there in the first. RoboCop is super dangerous in the first round, and I said that if this fight goes past the second round, it's a lot better for Jacker Manson. But as we saw with Jared Cannonier, he had Jared Cannonier really hurt in the first couple rounds. And as the fight progressed, Jared Cannonier picks the pace up, RoboCop's gas tank starts going down, gets him in trouble. And I thought that's how this fight was going to go. But there's always a danger fighting RoboCop. In the first round, there is always a danger, no matter how badly you have him hurt, of him doing what he just did to Jacker Manson. But hope Jacker Manson heals up. He's probably going to be on concussion protocol for the next couple months. It's probably going to be a while until we see him in the octagon again, which sucks because he just took a pretty long layoff before this. But Gregory Rodriguez, highlight reel knockout of the year. I just wish that he would have had a little bit of common sense and not delivered that last blow that was very, very unfortunately uncalled for. But I digress. Moving on, Peyton Talbot and Felipe Lima. I will go ahead and say I was super wrong about this one, but I'm glad I was wrong about this one. And I mentioned this in the predictions video that I do hope that he proves me wrong. And he did. This is exactly what you want to see with a UFC rising prospect. You see them get exposed in one area of their game with Peyton Talbot. It was very clear against Raoni Barcelos that his wrestling and his ability to get up off of the ground when someone's on top of him was non-existent. And everyone asked the questions after that fight. Is he going to go back to the drawing board and work on what he needs to? And he definitely put in work over his last camp. And that's what you want to see in a prospect. Like, he obviously cares enough about this that he went back to his camp and grinded on grappling. His improvements, in my opinion, this performance was very, very similar to Paddy's performance over, what was his, who did he fight right after Jerry Gordon? Before Michael Chandler. There was someone in between there. But either way, like Paddy Pimblett's last two fights, right? The Michael Chandler fight and the one before. You see him go in that octagon and you go, wow, he has made drastic improvements, right? Same thing with Peyton Talbot. He walked in there and you could tell immediately the first shot Felipe took that it was going to be a different fight. And he made Felipe Lima look kind of amateur in this fight. It was a pretty dominant fight for Peyton Talbot. He looked really, really, really good. So I'm ecstatic that we've got a prospect like Peyton Talbot, because he's exciting to watch, right? Before that Barcelos fight, he had a lot of steam behind him. He's obviously still got a lot of steam, considering the fact that he was the first fight on the pay-per-view coming off of a loss. That speaks a lot. I personally would have liked to have seen this as the featured prelim if this card was actually a stacked pay-per-view like it should have been. We won't go there. We've already talked enough about that, but he looked incredibly good. Incredibly good. And Felipe Lima was a very highly touted prospect as well. And I had Felipe Lima dog walking Peyton Talbot just on the fact that I didn't think that Peyton Talbot would be able to improve his skills on the ground as much as he did. But he improved a shit ton. So absolute domination. He made Felipe Lima look like he did not belong in the same conversation as Peyton as far as a rising prospect is concerned. And personally, I'm very glad to see that Peyton Talbot is back in the win column. He brings some, he's got some weird vibes, right? But he brings some like exciting energy to the octagon. And it's kind of what the bantamweight division is about. Like, I love the fact that we've got someone like this coming up. But I would assume that they'll give him someone right outside the top 15. See if they can. I'd like to see them pair him up against another wrestler and someone that might be a little bit more physical than Felipe, because that was the thing, is that Peyton was the bigger guy in there, and Peyton is a pretty, like, kind of a bigger bantamweight, but he was a much bigger than Felipe Lima. So I would like to see them match him up against someone that's a little bit more physical but also still has a threat of wrestling. Like, I would love to see like a Ricky Simone versus Peyton Talbot. Like, I'm pretty sure Ricky Simone is ranked, so that wouldn't make sense, but that's the type of fight that I would like to see. I'd like to see him go against a style like Ricky Simone, where it's like, okay, proved that your wrestling has gotten better, but how much better has it gotten? Either way, great dub for Peyton Talbot. That's the second fight in a row that we did not get, and this would make 3. So things are very, very, very clearly falling apart betting-wise for us. Renato Moicano looked terrible. Outside of the first round when he dropped Beneil Dariush, he looked really flat last night. I don't know what it was, and it was tough because these types of fights you go, is Beneil looking that good, or is Renato looking that bad, or is it kind of a mixture of both? Like, Beneil showed a lot more aggression last night than he has in his most previous few fights. Don't get me wrong, I do think he looked a lot better in this fight than his last few. However, I do think that Renato looked the worst he's ever looked in the octagon in the UFC. So I think that had a large part as to play as to why Beneil looked as good as he did. But Moicano looked like he just didn't wake. He was like asleep at the steering wheel. Again, outside of that first round, he put Dariush down on the mat, couldn't get him out of there. And even that round that Renato knocked down Beneil, they still gave, all three judges still gave that to Beneil. So even though Beneil got dropped that round, he still was putting it on Moicano for the most part. And people were saying that Renato Moicano, think about this, at one point, people were saying that Renato Moicano was a bigger threat to Islam than some of the other guys in the lightweight division. Are you fucking serious? You just got beat by a dude with gray fucking hair. Beneil Dariush has a full head of gray hair and just beat Renato Moicano. And Renato Moicano was talking all this shit about how he's about to beat Islam when Islam was still the lightweight champ. He hadn't vacated, right? And again, you can have off performances. We've seen it before. We have seen fighters that are very talented just not look great, right? We've seen it with Israel Adesanya. We've seen it with, insert whatever high-level fighter you want. Like, they're going to have nights where they're off. And this was one of those for Renato. I choose to believe that this is all it is that it is an off night for him. Because I think 9 times out of 10, he makes pretty good work of Beneil Dariush. Here's the thing. I do, however, believe that this exposed Moicano's jiu-jitsu a little bit. Beneil Dariush has really good jiu-jitsu, very underrated jiu-jitsu, okay? But I do think he exposed the fact that Moicano's jiu-jitsu is not nearly as good as people like to think it is. So keep that in mind for his next few fights. If he gets paired up against a very good grappler that also presents some striking threats, we might see Renato struggle. Because, again, not that Beneil Dariush, you should be getting out of there easily on the ground, but Beneil Dariush took Moicano down 5 times, made them look really easy. They were technically very sound takedowns as well. I want to point that out. His takedowns looked crisp last night, especially his single legs. He was doing a really good job of misdirection and had very, very little friction or resistance on those takedowns. So, weird fight. I did not expect it to go this way at all. I'm sure most people didn't, but congrats to Beneil, I guess. I don't really know what the fuck they're gonna do with Beneil Dariush. Like, let's take a look at the rankings, because I genuinely don't know what they would do with him. Let's see here. Okay, so Apoya, champ, should be Sarukian next. If it's not Sarukian, I'll lose my mind. But what, are you going to give Beneil Dariush Patty? Are you going to give him Mateusz Gamrot? Are you getting him fucking Dan Hooker? Like, I don't like any of these matchups for Beneil Dariush. He's also fought some of these guys before in the top 5. Fought Charles, fought Mateus. So, like, does it make sense, maybe Dan Hooker, but I see Dan Hooker being a huge problem for Beneil. I don't know. I thought that Renato Moicano was going to send Beneil, you know, on his way out of the lightweight rankings. But it didn't happen. We move on. And boy, oh boy, was I wrong about this one too. Joshua Van, I will say it right here and right now, I was super wrong. I made a whole video about this, about how I thought that this was way too big of a step up in competition. I thought that Royval was going to use his jiu-jitsu, and I think that that was ultimately the downfall of why he lost that fight last night. I really do. I will say a 30-27 is outrageous, because I had 1-1 going into the third, and up until Brandon Royval was stupid and tried to stand and bang in the last 20 seconds of that fight, until he got knocked down in the last 20 seconds, he was winning that round. That fight was his. Now, do I think that the judges would have necessarily still scored it for Brandon Royval had he not been knocked down? Not necessarily, because we know the judges in this sport are fucked in the head, and Joshua Van is a rising star, and sometimes, some fucking questionable decisions get made. But Brandon Royval made a really, really low IQ choice here to stand and bang with Joshua Van, and I think that's what lost him this fight. But 468, like, they broke records here. There was over 700 strikes thrown in this fight. This is an absolute fight of the year contender. High standards were set. I mean, crazy fight. Crazy fight. This is exactly what you want out of a pay-per-view co-main. I mean, it was absolute fireworks from the get-go, and Joshua Van proved that he can hang with the best of the best. Here's where I did get a little frustrated watching this. Brandon Royval's got really good, underrated jiu-jitsu. He did not use it at all. There were no takedown attempts. I don't like that, okay? Especially when it became the dogfight that it did. If Brandon Royval was smart, he would have implemented wrestling, because we don't know what Joshua Van's wrestling looks like. We still don't know. He's the number one contender now. And we've got a champion in Alexandro Pantoja, which we'll get to in a second, who his jiu-jitsu is insanely good. It's like, now we've got a number one contender who's going to fight Pantoja next, and we know absolutely nothing about his ground game. Nothing. And that is where Pantoja is going to take him. Mark my words, Pantoja is going to submit Joshua Van. And I'm not hating on Joshua Van. He proved me wrong yesterday, and I wasn't not liking Joshua Van. I was just saying this was a big jump, right? And I really do like Joshua Van. I think he's exciting as shit. He brings a lot of fun matchups to the flyweight division. However, it makes me nervous that we have not seen his ground game, and he's the number one contender. I genuinely thought that Brandon Royval was going to implement some sort of game plan that involved takedowns and jiu-jitsu. But he didn't. He chose to stand and bang with Joshua Van, and Joshua Van has some of the best boxing in the flyweight division, if not the best right now. But God almighty, man, what an absolute banger of a fight. It's what you want. That's the UFC right there. That is where that meme of the dude in the late 90s that is just, I think he's got like violence painted on his chest or something like that. Like that's that fight. That was straight up violence. Got the people going. So, steam, man. I mean, these fights were solid. Moving on, Alexandre Pantoja and Kaikar France. I fucked up. I did. And I was 1 for 4 on the main card. But up until then, I was doing really good. It's crazy how that works with this sport. Like you're betting and you're like, oh hell yeah, I'm cruising, and then all of a sudden it's like 4 fights in a row you don't get right. That's the way the game goes. Either way, Alexandro Pantoja, I don't know why the hell I chose to bet against him. Kaikar France, his striking sucks. His striking sucks. I knew as soon as the fight started, he started trying to go to the body on Pantoja, and he was putting himself in like terrible spots to try to get to the body. And yeah, I fucked up. This fight was very one-sided. Alexandre Pantoja is proving to be a very dominant champ. Very dominant. He dominated Kaikar France. Absolutely zero threat from Kaikar France. None. And Pantoja made it look easy. Took him down. Got to his back. He was on his back the first round. And he got a takedown each round. The first takedown was very quick. He was on Carl France's back for pretty much the entire first round with a body triangle. Carl France looked like he did not know very many escapes from the back, especially when someone had a triangle locked in. You could tell he was trying to keep the lock on the bad side towards the ground, which was good. But once he did that, there was no type of game plan as to how to get out of there. It was just survive. I'll stay here and keep the choke off me, right? That's not going to work against someone like Pantoja. He's going to feel you out and see where your defenses are, and then it's going to end up happening like it did. Third round, he takes you down, gets on your back again. He knows what your defenses are at that point. Like, he's felt you out a little bit. He's tried to choke you a couple times, see what you're giving him. And a good champion like Pantoja is going to make those adjustments, and next time he gets on your back, he's going to take it. So, we obviously have Joshua Van versus Pantoja next. Early prediction right here, right now. Not even 12 hours after the event has ended. I think Pantoja is going to dog walk Joshua Van. Caveat, if Pantoja uses his wrestling and jiu-jitsu. If he does what Brandon Royval does and tries to prove a point that his boxing is just as good as this guy, I could see it being a little bit of a sketchy fight. But it shouldn't be. Pantoja should implement his jiu-jitsu like he has been. And in my opinion, it should be a pretty easy fight for Pantoja. Not super easy, but it's not going to be a war like this, I don't think. Pantoja is going to hopefully take him down. And then we'll get to see, right? It's weird that we'll see it in a championship fight. Like, you would expect that you would see the entire person's repertoire of skills before they get to a championship fight. But again, like, we still have not really seen Joshua Van's jiu-jitsu. So, Pantoja, very good jiu-jitsu. Very good. So, Pantoja's probably going to stay at the top, keep his belt. That's my early prediction. Moving on, Ilia Topuria and Charles Olivera. Listen, guys. This sport, the commentators, MMA YouTubers, MMA media in general, loves to throw around the word greatest of all time, or the GOAT, or we heard it last night. When the fuck did we hear it? I can't remember who they were calling the GOAT, but I was like, what? But either way, like, we all know that term is very loosely thrown around in the MMA community, right? However, there has to be a conversation here soon, not quite yet, because he only defended his featherweight title once against Volkanovski. And then Or no, he didn't against Volkanovski. Wait, he didn't even... defend. Or he defended it once against Holloway, sorry. But the GOAT conversation has to be had at some point if he continues on this trend. Again, he only defended his featherweight belt once. I'm assuming that he's going to stay at 155. I'm assuming he doesn't want to continue to cut down to 145. I like him at 155. But this is the type of guy that you can actually start to have a legitimate conversation about here in the next couple title defenses if he stays as dominant as he does. We all know that Charles Olivera has a propensity to be clipped, especially early on in the fight. So I knew that that was going to be a big factor here because he does. He always gets tagged. And then we see him go to his back. People are not willing to engage in his jiu-jitsu. Same old story, yada, yada, yada. We saw that happen last night. Ilya ends up in his guard, plays with it a little bit, but you could tell he felt like he did not want to be there. So he stood up, got Olivera back on the feet, and man, oh man, was that an absolutely brutal knockout. That knockout and Jacker Manson's knockout were tough. Nobody wants to see Charles Olivera go down like that. He's one of the fan favorites in this sport and has been for a really, really long time. But kind of had an idea that this was going to happen with how Charles typically gets clipped in every fight. And the big question was, is his power going to translate in 145? You know, the guys at 155. You know, the guys at 145 are a little smaller. His power is a little bit more pronounced down there. What will it look like at 155? Well, there's your answer. No one has ever flatlined Charles Olivera like that. People have knocked him down, right? People have knocked him down. Almost everyone in the top 5 has knocked him down. Justin Gaethje, Islam, Poirier, like everyone has knocked him down. But no one has absolutely just taken his soul from him like Ilya Topuria did. So his power obviously translates to 155 very well. And I don't know who's going to beat this guy. I genuinely don't. He's a scary dude. Scary dude. A scary 5'7" dude. But who should be next is Arman Tsarukyan. That is who should be next. Dana White was saying some crazy shit after the pay-per-view about how, yeah, he missed weight in the last one, but he's kind of getting in good graces now that he made backup weight for this one. It's like, fuck off, make the fight. This is the one that makes sense. So hopefully we get Ilya Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan next. Overall, card was very solid. Had a lot of finishes on it. Even the ones that were decision, they still ended up being like pretty exciting fights. We didn't really have any snooze fests yesterday, other than the Tracy Cortez Araujo fight. But we went like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 10. Went like 6 and 5 last night, so 50-50. It wasn't our best fight betting night, but you know, that's how it goes. We'll be better on the next one, hopefully. If you stuck around this long, let me know how you did in the comments below. Who you think wins against Ilya Topuria and Arman Tsarukyan? Who do you think is going to win this one? Joshua Van and Alexandro Pantoja. That's an exciting fight. A lot of people are hot on Joshua Van right now. Let me know who you got below in the comments, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.